What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host, and football is here. It's come. It showed up. It happened. It was thrilling. It was, I don't know if it met expectations. It was something. It was here, and the Chiefs whipped up on the Houston Texans 34-20 in the 2020 NFL season opener. To recap it, as we will every Thursday, every Monday, and absolutely every Sunday night. Joining me are John Breech from his household, his abode in Nashville, Tennessee, and Ryan Wilson, who's been thrown out of his house by his wife and has rented a small 4x4 room with a cot in Stamford, Connecticut.
We call it a studio.
You are actually on CBS Sports HQ, which for those that don't know, and you should, it's our 24/7 streaming sports network. Fantastic content, excellent up-to-the-minute analysis, player news conferences, gambling information. If you're not watching it, it's free. Go check it out. You can see Wilson recap the games, all the games, the NFL games on Sunday night with Eric Casillas there in our studio in Stamford, Connecticut. We will have, I'm sure Pete Prisco will be on. I might be on at halftime of the Sunday games. I'm sure I'll find out like 5 minutes before if I'm supposed to be on. But I did it every week last year. Always a good time. And John Breech is constantly peppering the airwaves over there. So go check it out. If in the event that we have a show, we will let you know. If we ever get a show on CBS Sports HQ, we'll tell you, and then you can help us double up, whoever's ratings might have been in the previous slot. Anyway, football happened, 34-20 Breech. Did give me a grade. I don't know, 1 to 10 scale. How did it meet your expectations? Were you a little disappointed? Was it just enough? Were you happy to have football back? Where did it fall for you?
Well, first of all, I hope Andy Reid had a chauffeur drive him home, because that mask he was wearing was so foggy. I don't know how he did anything. I don't know how he was calling plays. How do you feel if you're the Texans defense that Andy Reid was basically blinded by his mask and the Chiefs still put up 34 points? I would give it, Brinson, a solid 10. Is 10 the highest or is 10 the lowest?
Well,
I never know. You have these weird scoring systems.
We operate on the Spinal Tap grading scale, so you can go up to 11.
All right, then I am going to go with a 20-34 because that's how many points the Chiefs scored. I mean, it was phenomenal. It was great to finally watch football. And there was all this, I think, for the past week, all we were talking about was there's no preseason. This is going to be a sloppy game. Everything's going to be ugly. Passes are going to be overthrown. No chemistry with receivers and quarterbacks, especially in Houston, where we did see a little bit. But, Deshaun Watson got off to a hot start. But I actually thought it was a pretty solid football game, all things considered. So I give it a 10/34.
I would push – oh, sorry. I was just saying I'd push back a little bit. Like, I think it was kind of sloppy. I mean –
But here's the thing. How different was it this week one than every other week one the last 20 years?
Not much.
It felt a little perhaps cleaner. Now, part of that maybe is the crowd not affecting I think there are only 6 flags in this game. So maybe that's less of an effect. Maybe
6 flags.
So maybe Roger Goodell said, don't throw the flags. Maybe what's his name? Blakeman didn't want to take his mask off. So he's like, let's not throw flags.
Or maybe 6 Flags bought a sponsorship for the game and the league agreed to only throw 6 flags.
They didn't, because this is the first time I'm hearing about 6 Flags.
Amusement parks are very popular right now. It's in a pandemic. So they've got lots of cash to spend because people have been hanging out all summer at 6 Flags over Georgia, riding the vomit coaster and whatnot.
Breech's serial killer park is killing it this year, but every other park is not.
All right, so look, there are a couple things that we can dive into for each team, but I think it would be remiss if we didn't start with the star of the show. Actually, we'll point out, too, by the way, Chiefs -9.5, won pretty easily. If you were the contrarian douchebag who thinks you're smart by taking the Texans because nobody wins an 8-point spread in the last 5 years, like me, you lost your face. The Texans had a chance to cover a couple times, and it felt like they were going to steal it through the back door. It really did. You didn't think so?
I think after the first quarter, that game felt like it was over.
Well, you weren't wagering on it, so you weren't thinking like, because if you had the Chiefs -9.5, when the Texans scored that first garbage time touchdown, and then before they missed a 2-point conversion, you're like, oh my God, if they get this 2-point conversion,
they're
gonna stop. They're just gonna go down and score a touchdown. The over 53.5, which was the closing number, and this is kind of interesting. The over 53.5 hit. but the opening under of 56 hit. That's sort of a nightmare for Vegas, as bad as things could be for Vegas, in the sense that if you took the initial under and then when the line crashed, it fell all the way down to 52.5 on Thursday afternoon, you could have gotten a nice little window and hit both bets. And it only happened because Andy Reid was hell-bent on scoring. He kept running Clyde Edwards-Helaire into the goal line and then finally kicked a Harrison Butker field goal. 10 straight games for Kansas City where they have now covered. The last time they failed to cover, Ryan, was
the Super Bowl.
No, they
wrong. I know the answer because I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and that's where the game happened.
Right.
That was Patrick Mahomes.
Also, Ryan, I don't know if you know this. The Super Bowl was not 10 games ago.
I made the joke before I did. I was going to make a postseason games don't count joke, but fair enough.
That's right. Breech is correct. It was week 10 against the Tennessee Titans when they pulled out that miracle win. And that was a long field goal involved. A.J. Brown sort of took over.
35-32. That was Mahomes' first game back from injury. And obviously the Chiefs were favoring that game and they lost. But I will say, if you did bet the over at 53.5, the man you should be thinking that the over hit is Armani Watts.
Yes.
He recovered the onside kick, returned it inside Houston's 20. If he had just fallen on it, the Chiefs probably just run out the clock. There's no more points.
Well, I don't even know that they run out the clock because Edwards-Helaire broke a run for a first down that set up the goal line attempts. So, like, in fact, if you have Chiefs minus 9.5, you also want to thank Armani Watts. Because if he just drops down, I don't think Andy Reid's passing the ball there. I think they're running it with Clyde Edwards-Helaire 3 times. I think once Armani Watts broke that, it sort of finished off Houston's hopes of trying to like have a miracle cover.
Exactly. So if he goes down, and I know this is completely hypothetical, but if he goes down, I don't think the Chiefs throw it at all, as you just said. So and the Texans have 2 timeouts plus a 2-minute warning. Yeah. So you're down 31-20. The Chiefs punt. The Texans get the ball back, and then they could go down and just kick a field goal as quickly as possible because that would cut the lead to 1 score while also covering the spread. So Armani Watts, you're the man of the unsung hero of the over-under.
It also goes to show why like betting NFL is just betting sports in general is just stupid. It's like if you had the Chiefs, you had the right number, and you eventually won. I think the Texans came out and scored first. Patrick Mahomes, top fantasy performer, 26 points. Deshaun Watson had 22. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 19, and David Johnson had 16. Although Debo, I gotta say, the lack of Will Fuller on this is a little disappointing. 19.2 in PPR.
I'm not going to do what you did earlier today and call out a employer of yours, but I was using a box score where it said Will Fuller 11 points. So note it for next time.
Okay. Oh, you know what? Will Fuller 13.2 in regular fantasy, so that's fine. And that's if you get the bonus. So I guess 11 if you don't get the bonus for the 100 yards. Maybe sounds like whatever random employer that we share together did a bad job on that one. I don't know who it could be.
I didn't say that.
Me and Will's going to stay out of that conversation.
Right. Well, maybe fix your stuff, fantasy team. Anyway.
They're our friends.
The crowd, 15,895. They were pretty loud.
Hey, let me ask you this, because we didn't have the volume on in the studio at the start of the game. I saw some Twitter.
Oh, well, let's get to that in a minute. We'll get to that in a minute. I just want to get to it now.
Either way,
we'll get to it now. That's fine. We mentioned the crowd. So what happened was the Kansas City Chiefs come out and they came out on the field and there were multiple songs sung, the anthem, etc. Did they kneel during the anthem? They did.
Only one person knelt during the anthem.
One guy knelt during the anthem. The Houston Texans were not present during the anthem. They stayed in the locker room. There were a lot of guys who I think were planning to kneel, and they all decided it would be better off to stay in the locker room. They came out afterwards. Then everybody met at midfield and locked arms in a show of unity. Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, who, by the way, apparently are very close and kind of becoming good friends and believe they're going to see a lot of battles like this, assuming Bill O'Brien gets out of Deshaun Watson's way. And they linked up arms, and the crowd booed them. Now, presumably,
was that clear on the audio?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But it's hard to determine exactly what else they would have been booing. I think the crowd was booing what they thought was like, I don't think they were booing racial unity because that'd be a weird thing to do. I think it was probably inebriated Midwestern people booing the idea of protesting the national anthem, which is not actually what's happening.
Look, to give them the benefit of the doubt, they could actually be booing that they're delaying the start of football, which they've been waiting for.
People boo things all the time. Now,
True.
To take away the benefit of the doubt, they then launched into the tomahawk chop.
Ooh.
So, not a great look. And Chris Collinsworth, it was a weird scene when he said something. He goes, "Ow! I just want to say that I stand behind these players 100%. Now let's announce the football." And it was like, okay, are you being short on purpose, or did somebody tell you not? Like, did somebody tell you not to say something, but you felt like you had to say something? It was a weird little scene. Al Michaels had nothing to say.
Well, Collinsworth didn't get to do his Collinsworth slide, so he was just off his game to start off.
But Collinsworth said it, and then he was in this he was made this little weird face, like he's
maybe it was in response to the booing. I don't know, but
I don't know.
I think you would have to ask someone who was at the game, because it was.
Right.
I thought it was tough to tell on TV, and they could have been booing the unity. That is absolutely a possibility.
It's a really
I think
weird thing
there's
to
also
boo.
been fans boo whatever they want when they've been drinking. When you're out there, you hear somebody else boo, all of a sudden you want to boo. If Wilson started booing you right now, I would start booing. Booing's contagious. That's just what happens. But I will say, what?
Someone was inebriated and picked the Steelers to finish last in the division. So anything can happen.
Hey, look, if you want to see me get inebriated while we do this podcast, go to youtube.com/pick6. You can watch me drink some Wild Hills Pinot Noir. Probably shouldn't show you how much is left in that bottle, huh?
But so real quick to the booing is that it's also possible that, fans were annoyed that the Chiefs were interlocking hands with the Texans. I also read a couple tweets that there were people running around and doing things during what was supposed to be a moment of silence, and people were annoyed by that. So there's a bunch of theories. None of them are good. Just don't boo during a moment of silence. How about that just be the moral of the story here?
And there was also it wasn't clear to the broadcast team and to NBC what was happening. And so I think it was probably obviously not very clear to what was happening to the player or to the fans who were there. They were we're being told this is maybe what happens, and then we're going to get to some football. I don't think they're booing.
Mahomes' tweet in there for you to read.
Okay. You want me to? Mahomes. Being down there, I honestly didn't hear a lot of booing. I've seen a little bit of the videos after. We want to show unity and show we are going to come together and fight the good fight, and we hope our fans will support us like they do in the game every single day. Adidas also aired multiple commercials with Patrick Mahomes talking about unity and saying a lot of good things. And so there was the vibe was ever present throughout the game with intermittent Republican and Democrat presidential campaign ads, which, by the way,
definitely added some spice to that whole thing.
JJ Watt. These things are pretty intense, man. I'm not going to try to talk politics. I'm saying both sides are cranking it up to 14.
JJ Watt definitely thought the fans were booing the moment of unity.
Okay.
So his quote real quick was, "The moment of unity I personally thought was good. I mean, the booing during that moment was unfortunate. I don't fully understand that. There was nothing involved other than two teams coming together to show unity." And that was from James Palmer TV. So he obviously thought the fans were booing.
TV?
James Palmer TV on Twitter. So he obviously thought the fans were booing the moment.
Do you think maybe it was the Texans offense pre-booing Bill O'Brien?
Yeah. All right. So let's get to some football.
Let's talk football.
Right. I mean, look, it's part of the conversation that's going to happen around the NFL this year and sports in general. Not politicizing it, iTunes reviewers. We're just telling you what happened. But yeah, the Bill. So what's the bigger story here in terms of the running backs? That the Chiefs drafted the next superstar running back in Clyde Edwards-Helaire with their first-round pick, and he went absolutely bananas and looked great for Kansas City, running for a total of 138 rushing yards on 25 carries and 1 touchdown. It really could have been 2 touchdowns or even 3 touchdowns. A long of 27 yards. He was fantastic. Had 3 or was the story that Bill O'Brien is hell-bent on justifying his trade of DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson and is going to feed him 40 times a game when he's not losing, even when he is losing by 17 points. What's the bigger story here, Ryan?
I think it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. By the way, that Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the stats you read, obviously very impressive. He was targeted 1 time in the passing game, which is
twice actually.
Twice.
One,
very un-CEH like, but I'm sure that'll change. So something worth noting, the Chiefs, at least in the first 3 quarters or so, played a lot of 6-man box, 2 deep safeties. So ideally, they were happy letting them run the ball. The Texans were. It sort of blew up in their face.
You're saying no. The Texans played. The Texans set up on a defense designed, and this is where Andy Reid always gets you in chess. They set up a defense designed to be like, hey, look, we're not letting you throw deep on us. We're not letting Tyreek Hill go up top. Yeah, but the Chiefs responded by pounding the ball down their throats.
Death by 1,000 Clyde Edwards-Helaire carries, basically. So, I mean, other teams may copycat that, but at the end of the day, the Chiefs still got to 34 points. So that's the math you have to do. That's more impressive to me than David Johnson. I think David Johnson blew my doors off in terms of how well he played because I had very low expectations. I think his over-under was 79.5 for total yards. He got past that.
It's 77 rushing yards and
32 maybe. He cleared it pretty easily. So that's good news. The Texans, meanwhile, have about 27 other problems to work out.
The 2 possessions that you're referring to, so the Chiefs' first possession, 8 plays, 21 yards, and a punt. And by the way, I'm going to sort of tell something out of school here, but I want to make fun of them for it. I'm on a text thread, as I mentioned all the time, with Pete Prisco and Jamie Eisenberg and another former coworker of ours. Clyde Edwards-Helaire's first 3 carries were not great. They were like lined up out like a single back or like an I form or something. And we had this text from Pete. He looks tentative. We're like, well, I mean, Pete, it's 3 carries. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, I don't know if he should be the first pick in anybody's fantasy draft. We spent the entire night just beating him because like every carry after that from Edwards-Helaire was it was the opposite attentive. And maybe he didn't I don't even think Pete's wrong. Like he wasn't attacking the hole or wasn't very comfortable. But then they sort of shifted formations and got him into spots like shotgun runs and draws. And I mean, he was popping the hole left and right. He was cutting. He was moving. He looked like a Brian Westbrook, like a LaShawn McCoy type, a Maurice Jones-Drew, I think a lot of people compared him to. And all of that checks out. And for me, I think it's a bigger story that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is awesome because the Chiefs upgraded their offense somehow. Like they had the best offense in football, and now they're even better. And these 2 drives that I'm talking about, after that 8-play, 21-yard drive where they punted, they go 11 plays, 75 yards for a touchdown. That is demoralizing. And then 16 plays, 86 yards, 9 minutes and 4 seconds off a Texans punt for another touchdown to take a 14-7 lead. That's the longest drive of Patrick Mahomes' career. And the Texans defense was at the most plays he's ever had in his career for a touchdown drive. And the Texans defense was absolutely gassed at that point. And you just felt like the only way Houston could respond was to crank it up and turn it into the shootout and to let Deshaun Watson cook. And instead they just kept running David Johnson.
But also that's not a possibility to do that because Bill O'Brien's handcuffing that offense. Bill O'Brien was in midseason form tonight. That's the thing that impressed me the most. See, we had a pandemic-shortened offseason, and somehow that man did not miss a beat. And starting with the 4th and 4 on their 3rd possession from the 50-yard line.
That's absolutely cowardly.
I think, anything over 4th and 5, I'm not really going to fight. But you're playing the Chiefs in Kansas City after they scored 51 or whatever straight points on you in that playoff game. So they can easily outscore you. And you punt it from 4th and 4 at midfield. And then what do the Chiefs do? They go down straight, score a touchdown. And at that point, it was game over.
Breech, do you know, remember, I was actually rewatching the Week 6 game where the Texans went into KC last year and won. 4th and 3, late in the 4th quarter, about the 38-yard line on the Chiefs side. Billy Brinson goes for it. They get it. They win the game. So he may argue, I don't know what his comments have been tonight, well, we didn't have preseason, where it's a new blah, blah, blah. I think you're sort of shooting yourself in the foot. And I'll say one last thing, Brinson, before you follow up. Here's the Texans' defensive game plan, which I don't think anyone would fault.
I wasn't raising my hand. I was scratching my beard.
Oh, okay. So the Texans' game plan that no one would have any issue with, I would imagine, 3 hours before the game. We are going to make the Chiefs' least experienced, youngest player beat us, and he literally beat them like a drum. I mean, not much in Tyreek. We saw Kelsey a little bit early. Patrick Mahomes was good, but he wasn't like lights out Patrick Mahomes.
No, he was a little off for sure.
Marcus Robinson dropped 2 touchdowns early in the first half. So let's see what Clyde Edwards-Helaire does, and he just absolutely dominated.
Well, I was going to say the offensive line. Like Kelechi Osemele was a monster. They were moving the Texans off their spot. J.J. Watt was like kind of a non-factor for most of the game, and that's hard to do for a perfectly healthy J.J. Watt.
And two quick things to the running the ball all the time. We're getting my fun fact of the podcast right now. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he ran the ball, 25 times, I think. The Chiefs ran the ball 34 times in the game. Here is your fun fact. The Chiefs ran the ball 30 or more times, 0 times last season, and they've already done it in the first game. And honestly, watching the Chiefs offense on Thursday night, it really felt like Andy Reid kind of went vanilla. He just said, you know what, we're just going to give the ball to the rookie until the Texans slow us down. And if they do, we'll let Pat throw the ball a few times. If they don't, we're just going to keep feeding him. It was like
he couldn't see.
He's like, just keep handing the ball off. And Patrick Mahomes was like, what, man? Can we throw it? I want to rack up a few passing yards.
I mean, like, there's nothing funny about, mask and all this stuff, but like the face shield thing, and like, it was like, at first, on the first series, it was like just fogged up around his mouth where he was like calling the plays, and then by the end of it, it looked like like some sort of who are the bad guys in Star Wars? It looked like a stormtrooper mask. It was so fogged up, it was like borderline opaque. Mahomes had.
Your buddy Mina Kimes actually had a funny tweet about it. She said, by the end of the game, that face mask looks like the person with bad internet getting on a Zoom call.
That's pretty good.
You can't even make them out.
So Mahomes had just one passing attempt over 20 yards at halftime, 16 pass attempts, 16 rush attempts. The Chiefs, as Breech points out, they set the record last year for fewest rush attempts per game by a Super Bowl champion. This is a team that did not run the ball. Andy Reid has always passed the ball 60% of the time. I really think that, and maybe this factored into their drafting Clyde Edwards-Helaire, because they drafted him in the middle of a pandemic, was, hey, like we are going to have to be a little more balanced and a little more simple out of the gate. And I've been saying this. I feel like I've been saying this. I mean, maybe I just say so much that nobody hears it, but like teams that simplify things and smart teams are going to simplify things and run the ball a ton. Anybody who's trying to be complicated with an NFL offense out of the gate in 2020 with this offseason is going to struggle. Like, you're not going to just come out of the gates firing on all cylinders with your passing game. Mahomes was off. I mean, he and his receivers were not on the same page, and how could they be? They're not going to get there until probably like October at this rate.
I thought Mahomes made maybe 2 bad throws. He only threw.
I'm not saying he was bad, but they weren't like, he missed a couple of guys, and they took away Tyreek Hill, and they did like sort of try to nullify Travis Kelce for the most part. So they were forced to use Sammy Watkins and DeMarcus Robinson, and they weren't on the same page. Completely.
Whoa. Week 1 Sammy showed up, baby. Don't take anything from Sammy Watkins.
And Mahomes was on the same page as DeMarcus Robinson. DeMarcus Robinson just wasn't reading the book. He just Ryan mentioned the 2 touchdown drops. I mean, that was ugly. Those were strikes.
I'm not blaming Patrick Mahomes. He was 24-32 for 211 yards and 3 touchdowns. But it was very clear.
Sharper.
He's a what?
He has been sharper in the way he's played. There's no doubt about it.
For sure. He's been sharper. And I just think Andy Reid understands that he's going to win a little differently for the first month or so of the season. And I think they're going to.
Also, I heard Breech point this out on HQ on Thursday afternoon. 18 and 22 starters returned for the Chiefs. The Texans, meanwhile, traded DeAndre Hopkins for a running back.
All right, so the Texans. The Texans. Billy or Brinson. You know what? We'll tell you what Billy or Brinson did wrong after the break. Okay, so the Houston Texans finished with 20 total points. And I got to say, I mean, whether you're on Twitter or you're texting with your friends or whatever, or Slack chatting it, whatever it is, everyone on the planet except Bill O'Brien is wondering why the hell, like, they wouldn't stop running the football. It was unbelievable. I wrote down in our rundown, I was like, what is Bill O'Brien doing with his game plan? He's running the football with Duke Johnson down 17 in the second half 3 times and then punting. And then he didn't even try to get an extra snap before the third quarter, down 17 in the second half. Like, they had 5 or 10 seconds where they could get a play off and just try to get the play and just keep it moving and get some tempo. And when they actually got tempo, it looked like the team was operating well. Will Fuller was begging for it to get open on a deep ball from Deshaun Watson. The offensive line wasn't very good, but it felt like this was I'm going to show you how good David Johnson is game that started out well and then backfired for Bill O'Brien.
Yeah. I mean, look, here's what I'll say real quick. With 12 minutes left in the third quarter. In the fourth quarter, 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Deshaun Watson had thrown fewer than 20 passes. And here's why that is a problem to me. You just paid this quarterback $156 million. You're playing a Chiefs defense. Their top corner is suspended, Bashaud Breeland. Their other top corner, I think, was out with a hand injury, Ward. And now you have a rookie out there. And why aren't you trying to dice these guys up? Like, I know it seems like Bill O'Brien spent the first three quarters trying to justify the David Johnson trade and the fact that he got him in the field. But, like, you have a rookie out there. The Chiefs are down their two best corners, and you paid your quarterback $156 million. That is the guy you should be using to attack the Chiefs secondary, which theoretically would have been their weakness. But they didn't do that. He just said, you know what, we're just going to keep running it down the throat, and Bill O'Brien doing Bill O'Brien things. And you can't beat a good team with your coach coaching like that.
So we make fun of Bill O'Brien, the general manager, but we sort of give Bill O'Brien, the coach, a pass because they win football games.
Sure.
But I wonder, are we going to look back in 5 years and go, they squandered about 2.5 wins a year because Bill O'Brien does the things that Breech just talked about? Because, yes, he gets a pass because he does really well in terms of winning football games that maybe a lot of us didn't think he would win. But I feel like he's leaving a lot of games on the table, right?
I mean, this one's tough, and it's sort of like the playoff game last, in January. Like they were up 24-0, and normally you're going to get bludgeoned publicly for losing a game where you're up 24-0. But the Mahomes and the Chiefs came back so quickly that I was like, well, what are you going to do?
Bill O'Brien gave up a 24-0 lead and got promoted to general manager.
Got a promotion. Got to trade his second best player. This one felt a little different in the sense that the Chiefs never completely put the Texans out of it. I mean, there's two soul-crushing drives that we're talking about. Definitely, look, it was 14-7. You're like, oh, I'm holding this Texans plus 10 ticket, and I'm not getting a little warm here. But, you knew that you had a chance to, crawl back into it. It just felt like the Texans had no interest in opening up their offense and trying to attack with their skill position guys. And remember, we talked all offseason, what is the Texans offense going to look like? Is it going to be feed David Johnson, and then when you're trailing or you have second or third and long, Deshaun Watson drops back and tries to hold the ball for a long time and see if Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, and Kenny Stills going to get open? And, the problem with that, if that is the offense, is that, he might take a bunch of shots because he holds the ball too long, and it feels a little like the Cam Newton offense that they used to run in Carolina. And that is what they did. That's what they did. Deshaun Watson's holding the ball way too long. He's trying to scramble out from pressure. Tyus Howard was getting abused on the side, and I get that, it's early in the season and, this offensive line has to come along. But, Deshaun Watson was under siege by a Kansas City defense that was really good at the end of last year, but isn't necessarily elite.
Well, here's the problem. Number one, Duke Johnson got hurt. So last year, the Texans, I think, had 34 snaps with two backs in the backfield at the same time. Carlos Hyde was the back at the time. So I think there's going to be more of that because David Johnson is more of a pass catcher than Carlos Hyde was. But Duke Johnson's out, so that's one weapon. So that's clearly a concern. But to your point, it ain't like the Chiefs' front seven is getting after the passer. So if you're getting hit as the Texans offensive line, Deshaun Watson, that's an issue, especially when, let me check my notes, week 2, Baltimore, week 3, Pittsburgh, week 4, Minnesota. So that's problematic for an 0-1 team that did not look great.
There's fun fact number 2. They play the Ravens in week 2. They just played Patrick Mahomes. That's 2 MVPs. They played the last 2 MVPs. They're the first team since 2005 to open their season. Someone in the NFL scheduling office hates them because that's brutal. And as Ryan said, you have the Steelers in week 3 and Vikings in week 4. There's an easy path to 0-4 right there.
What does the GM do with Bill O'Brien if they go 0-4?
Look, you guys need to understand something. Bill O'Brien's not going anywhere.
I'm joking. I said,
I know, but people were like, Bill O'Brien's on the hot seat, right? No, he's not. He's the GM. He's the head coach. The guy who hired him died. And the guy who replaced the owner died. Oh. He's replaced by his son, who's his son's not going to fire Bill O'Brien. Bill Bill O'Brien. He made Bill O'Brien the GM, and then Bill O'Brien signed Deshaun Watson to a contract extension. He let him double down on trading DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson and signing Deshaun Watson. Like, Bill O'Brien's locked in for 5 years minimum. He ain't going anywhere.
Even if he starts like 0-8.
Who's firing him?
The
Deshaun
person
Watson?
who's in charge of the team right now.
Hal McNair ain't firing him.
Deshaun Watson's firing him.
No, Deshaun Watson issues statements publicly getting his back all the time. And look, this team might end up winning 9 games, whatever it is. I mean, they did play the Chiefs. The Chiefs are a really good football team. The stretch of games coming up is very difficult. But I don't think that this game plan is going to be successful. If John Harbaugh is licking his friggin' chops right now.
Well, the difference is that, as John pointed out, they have Lamar Jackson the MVP, but the Ravens defense is about 4 times better than the Chiefs defense. So that's the big issue. What do you mean,
I think it's probably better, but I think the Chiefs played pretty well.
We just talked about they ran the ball 50 times that the Texans did, and a lot of mind-numbing situations.
If you are, and there was this, I'm not trying to call out Collinsworth and Al Michaels because they're good at their jobs, but part of broadcasting is that you sit down with the coaches and you talk to them throughout the week and you prepare for them in this pre-production meetings, and you get information from them that you then weave into the broadcast as a way of, it's analysis. You don't say like Bill O'Brien, some stuff you don't say Bill O'Brien told us, but they kept repeating over and over again that they felt that the offense was too predictable with DeAndre Hopkins because they knew where the ball was going to go late. And that was one of the things that concerned them. That is obviously a spoon-fed nugget in a pre-production meeting from Bill O'Brien and the coaching staff, where they are trying to hammer home the fact that DeAndre Hopkins made the offense too predictable. So we needed to get David Johnson and mix it up and keep Deshaun Watson from locking in on a target. Now, there's a viable argument that you don't want to be just completely locking in on DeAndre Hopkins. But and I didn't think Brandon Cooks, I didn't think the passing game was bad. But if the offense is going to be all David Johnson all the time, and then you're just mixing in these passers, I mean, it ain't going to work.
I will say this. I thought David Johnson did a great job. I thought Deshaun Watson is Deshaun Watson. I like him a lot. He's a top 5 young quarterback.
Holds the ball too long.
Yeah, but we know that's him. But Will Fuller balled out. And one of the concerns was, how are they going to replace DeAndre Hopkins? And the other concern is, can Will Fuller stay healthy? Through week 1, he did. Randall Cobb was a non-factor. There's a lot of conversation how he was going to fill some of the slot roles that DeAndre Hopkins left behind. Brandon Cooks flashed a little bit early, so they have to figure that out. But hats off to Will Fuller for balling out.
So, I mean, like, was the offense, like, substantially different? Like, you have 10 targets for Will Fuller and 8 catches, and he had 112 yards. Look, I drafted him in every league I'm in. I think he's going to have a huge season. He's going to have a huge target share. He's going to ball out all season. But, like,
did you know that for sure, though? I mean, Antonio Brown left and Juju Smith-Schuster disappeared.
I felt pretty confident. Will Fuller's good.
Okay.
I bet that he would have 3 touchdowns tonight.
You also bet Trent Williams winning the comeback player of the year.
Oh, yeah. I also bet you that Devontae Parker would have more yards than Sammy Watkins after. And
that blew up my face.
Yeah, Sammy Watkins, by the way. Watkins Watch 2020, 7 catches, 82 yards, 1 touchdown.
Week 1, Sammy.
Over under 82.5 receiving yards for Sammy Watkins between now and the Super Bowl.
Under. Way under.
What's the chances that Sammy Watkins would go off again in week 1?
But you know what's crazy? I think Sammy Watkins might have more receiving yards in 2020 than anyone else.
He had a big Super Bowl, too. That's right.
That's right.
Well done.
You know what's crazy is we talk about Bill O'Brien and the Texans offense, but what do you think was a bigger letdown for Houston in this game, their offense or their defense?
I was about to ask whose defense is better, the Texans or the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs is way better.
Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely do think that. I thought the Texans defense couldn't come up with any big stops. Whenever the Chiefs needed to do something, they kind of did it. It felt like they were just going through the motions, kind of just playing with the Texans like a cat playing with a ball of yarn, and they got serious every once in a while, and they'd go down and score. And I really thought the biggest difference in this game was the Texans missing that 51-yard field goal. The Chiefs, it was 14-7. Then the Chiefs have the ball with 25 seconds before halftime. They go down. They get a field goal, 17-7. First possession to start the second half. Get a touchdown. Now it's 24-7. Once it was 24-7, it was game over. Like, there was no way that the Texans were coming back on that. And those were the the Houston's defense couldn't get a stop in either of those situations. They couldn't get a stop on a 25-second drive right before halftime to let the Chiefs get in field goal range, and then they couldn't get a stop to start the second half.
And by the end of that 24-7, the beginning of the second half there, Breech, that you talked about, they scored. I think the time of possession was something like 22-10 in favor.
Oh, it was bad. It was bad.
As you talked about a second ago, Brinson, the Texans D was absolutely gassed. Also, something we haven't talked about, into the third quarter, the 17 seconds that just
I mentioned that. Like, Bill O'Brien's like, well, let's just get to the fourth quarter. It's like, what are you down 17? Run a play.
He's like the blackjack dealer.
Yeah, it's a cooler. It's like, you don't think that 17 seconds matters. You get a free timeout after this play. Like, you can call any play you want. You got plenty of time to get it in. You get a free timeout and a free break to dial up another script and get ready to go score. And if you do, you're kind of back in the game. That was depressing. There's a lot of that from Bill O'Brien where you feel like he's like, we lost. I mean, like, you just feel like it's over. And the Texans had 360 yards and the Chiefs 369. I mean, they weren't like horrendously outgained in terms of total yardage. 21 first downs to 28. 25 minutes of possession to 35 minutes of possession.
And that actually caught up towards the end there. It was more than that. Breech, let me ask you this, and I'm not joking. I'm just being serious because you have experience with this. So knowing the Texans, and they usually win 9, 10, 11 games, and they blow their fans' minds in the playoffs in terms of losing. Would you rather be that guy?
Ooh.
Or as a Bengals fan, would you rather just go 4-12 and just say, all right, this is good. I'm just going to ride it out, and then next season will be the year?
No, I want to get to the playoffs. I don't care if it's a loss every season because
Really?
every time you're in that playoff game, before it kicks off, you think you can win. Sure, by the second quarter, you're probably down 17-0. You know it's over and it's going to be waiting till next year. But for that quarter and a half that you're in the postseason, there is that hope that playoff win is finally coming. And Texans fans are always thinking, hey, look, we get to the postseason. Eventually, we'll get to the AFC Championship game. They don't even think it's Super Bowl because the Texans have never even made it to the AFC Championship. And that's what their fans are thinking. We can win this division, maybe get to the AFC title game. So I think they would absolutely take the playoff berth every day. I think most fans
would you rather have 10 straight years of playoff berths, playoff losses, first round playoff losses,
decisions by
or one Super Bowl berth in 9 years of 5 losses or 5 wins, excuse me?
The Super Bowl berth. I would take one Super Bowl, and so 9 years of no playoff berths.
Oh, you're terrible for 9 years, and you get.
But the 1 year you're good, you go to the Super Bowl. I'll take the Super Bowl
versus
berth.
10 years.
You don't even win. You don't even win the Super Bowl.
No, you don't win because obviously you would take the Super Bowl win.
But then none of the other times
of playing with Bill Brinson, like watching Billy Brinson do the exact same things over and over again.
Yeah, so you go 4-12 for 9 years in a row, and then the 10th year you get a Super Bowl berth, or you go 10-6, 10 years in a row, but you lose the first playoff game you play every year.
Is this like a COVID Super Bowl berth where fans aren't allowed to attend the game?
You can go.
Okay, if I can go, then I want the Super Bowl berth.
But you have to walk around with me.
And but you know what's funny is that 17-second thing I really think epitomizes – we talk a lot about Bill O'Brien making these mental mistakes in games and the decisions he makes. And, you know, we don't always come up with 20 examples per game, but it's little things like that, and they add up. And eventually, you know, when you're playing a good team, you're not going to win making those mistakes. And losing 17 seconds might not seem like a big deal.
You're losing a free play.
You could be losing multiple. If you call a pass play and it goes incomplete, and they came out in the fourth quarter, the second play of the fourth quarter was the interception that iced the game. So maybe that doesn't happen if you're running these plays in the third quarter and the Chiefs don't have a chance to rest when you're switching sides at the end of the quarter. So it's just insane that he would let that happen.
All right. The Chiefs are back. Chiefs look great. I would be what's up next for these teams? We said the Texans play the Ravens.
And the Chiefs are at the Chargers.
All right, let's assume that the Ravens hold serve against the Browns at home as 8.5-point favorites in week 1. What do we think the week 2 line is? Is it at Baltimore? Houston at Baltimore?
It's in Houston.
Baltimore at Houston. What is are they have fans there? Probably not, right?
I don't know the Texans.
There's only 2 teams.
Right.
It's Kansas City and Jacksonville.
Oh, right, yeah.
And the Colts, the Cowboys, and I think the
So Dolphins. The Texans aren't doing fans, but the Cowboys are?
No. The Texans I don't think we'll have fans in week 1, but it's play it by ear after that.
Okay.
So my line is -4.
I was going to say -3 Ravens.
You're saying -4 Ravens, right? You're not saying the Texans are favored.
Right. Yes.
Okay. That's probably right. That's a good call. I think I actually bet on that right now. Let's see if I can find it.
But then Chiefs-Chargers, because you look at, we just talked about how the Chiefs have covered in 10 straight games. And also Patrick Mahomes is like Superman of September. Debo's got the stats here. 8 touchdown passes, or 26 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions, and he's 8-0 all time in the month of September. I mean, that seems like an obvious bet no matter what the point spread is. And the game is in LA, so it might not be a huge point spread there. Could you imagine if the Chargers lose to the Bengals in week 1, what this point spread will be in week 2? Chargers, Chiefs.
Chiefs would be -9.
But if the Chargers beat the Bengals, maybe like -5 or 6.
The preseason odds was -5.5, and the Ravens at Texans preseason was Ravens -6.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Are you gonna? I'm gonna tell you something. If the Ravens are playing the Texans and the Ravens are -3, I saw Spoon in Vegas. This is, I think, his Twitter handle, Spoonier. Anyway, what a gambling dude. He's like, you know what is stupid? This like sharp thing where you're like, I got to bet against the best teams in football. Like maybe we just stop doing it. Like maybe we just don't need to be adorable and take the Texans +9.5. Maybe we just don't have to do that. Maybe we just take the Chiefs and realize that the Chiefs, with Andy Reid coming off a bye, are going to beat the snot out of the Texans.
Worth noting, Todd Furman took the Chiefs. He was like, I'm not even messing around with the Texans.
You start turning into the Bill O'Brien of betting when you do that. You outthink yourself and you'll lose. That's what happens.
Of course it does.
The Billy O. Brinson of betting is Will Brinson.
Oh, my God. Debo went to Twitter to look for something, and there was a Mike's Hard Lemonade ad on his Twitter feed. And he had told us earlier on his – how does that – is it on your computer? Are you running it through your computer?
Yeah, it's on my laptop.
They're listening, man.
Yep.
I mean, he said, I'm drinking a Mike's Hard Lemonade, and there is a promoted Mike's Hard Lemonade tweet in his feed within 30 minutes.
Now, let me say that this conversation actually started because we thought Debo was drinking milk at midnight, and we were giving him this crazy look like, dude, why are you drinking milk? What are you doing at midnight with milk in your hand? And he actually looked a little ashamed, like, should I just say it's milk? Because I don't want to tell him what it really is, when in fact it was Mike's Hard Lemonade.
I might have a milk after this while I'm editing the podcast. Post Mike's Hard.
Strawberry milk?
You're going to follow up on Mike's Hard Lemonade with milk?
That's
a little bit of a palate thing.
I can't make fun of Debo because I'm drinking hard seltzer. I am drinking Sweetwater 420 now makes seltzers.
Everybody has a seltzer.
I didn't know they had one. I bought it. It's delicious.
There's a Mother Earth Brewing in Kinston, North Carolina, makes this thing called Cersei, and the seltzers are delicious. But I can't. They make me too gassy. I start burping too much. Too much seltzer gets me too much. I'm more of a beer man.
Who'd have thought that Brinson, who drinks more than all three of us combined, that his weakness would be seltzer?
I actually don't like it.
It's your kryptonite.
I thought Breech was going to say, who would imagine that Brinson would be gassy?
My wife certainly doesn't think that. All right. This, I guess, show is officially ended at this point when we're talking about this. Ryan, you've got to go back to your hotel room, which you volunteered. By the way, kudos to you. You volunteered to go to Stamford, Connecticut and work for the weekend, knowing you had to do a show on Thursday, but you couldn't drive back because you got to stay Sunday night. So you are going to spend, correct me if I'm wrong, the next 2 days lounging around a hotel by yourself with no family.
No, I'm going to do a hit tomorrow, Stanford.
And how long is that hit?
I don't think it's very long.
It's a little staycation for you.
Saturday I'll be working because I have to. I'm a college.
Oh, you do cover college football, so you're going to get a chance to. You're gonna lie in a hotel bed and watch college football.
So on Friday though, you can check out the sights and sounds of Stamford, Connecticut.
It's like you read my mind, Breech.
I mean, good on you. Look, we were like, why is Ryan doing this?
What are you talking about? This is work, man.
This is work. This is work. What are you talking about? I'm not
grinding on
gonna have fun all weekend. You gonna go out to eat?
No, I usually Uber Eats it up.
Maybe some
Oh,
soup.
you Uber Eats? What?
What do you mean?
I mean, I guess you don't want to go out in public right now.
Well, yeah,
Uber,
right. That's
Uber
why.
Eats is a little safer than we do Postmates. That's safer than
Yeah, I would go. I mean, if regular, I would go out, sure. But
right.
So you're being socially responsible.
Or he's got to go to the office, so he can't be,
got my
he
mask.
can't be doing his normal Ryan thing where he's like oons at a bar.
Right. I can only do it in the room.
Finding the biggest dive bar in the state and
Right.
staying there until 4 a.m.
Right. Somebody's gonna spot Ryan like walking back into his hotel room with like a half gallon of Tito's and like, this is it, 12 pack of Mike's Hard Lemonade. He's like, ooze, just losing his mind going to party in his hotel room for 12 hours. Good for you, Ryan. Enjoy your staycation. We'll talk to you on Sunday night for our signature show where we recap every single game on the NFL schedule. See you guys then.